Hey there, Philip here from Manning the Fort, and today I have my complete interview with Kevin Rahman. Kevin is the creator of Forbidden Psalm and its many expansions, including one that is currently up on Kickstarter, KillSampleProcess, which takes the grimdark feel of Forbidden Psalm and puts it in a cyberpunk setting. You can find a link to that Kickstarter in the description below, as well as links to all of the other Forbidden Psalm products that Kevin has come out with. I had a great time talking with him, and I hope to set up some more interviews with other indie game designers in the near future. If you're into that sort of thing, I'd appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. But for now, on to the interview.
Yeah, of course. Name's Kevin Rahman. You can just call me Kevin. I am one-man band that is KRD Designs. The creator of the miniatures game Forbidden Psalm.
Great. So, Forbidden Psalm is going to be a big focus of what I want to talk about today. We'll also get into some future, or I guess current projects, really. But just to get us acquainted with you a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about your tabletop gaming history? What games did you start with, and kind of how has your journey progressed?
Yeah, so I actually started as a role player more than a miniature gamer. Been playing role-playing games since I was a teenager, 12, 13 years old, playing Dungeons and Dragons and things. Got into miniature games, I think like 5 years ago, with a game called Infinity, which is the most complicated miniatures game that exists, in my opinion. It's, rules upon rules upon rules. I love the game, but it is the densest one, and I'm not sure why I decided to start with the hardest to learn. Since then, I love Infinity still. I still play it, but been more drawn towards more and more narrative games. So kind of going back to that roots of the role playing,
Sure.
more than dense rule sets or games where you have to keep up with the current meta of the game or stuff like that. Things like Frostgrave, and kind of games like that kind of were more appealing to me, really.
Sure, where you can build a real kind of narrative focus.
Yeah, and it kind of games where there are some game systems that seem to promote competitiveness. And I like to play games because I'm playing with toy soldiers with friends. So playing a game where it's promoting that kind of competitive nature, I'm just not as interested in that anymore. I kind of bounced off that quite heavily and looking more for narrative things where it's about the story that you're telling and the fun that you're having, less than the who can build the best army list.
Right.
With, your 40Ks and things.
I wonder if that's kind of a side effect of having been around the gaming community for a significant amount of time, and maybe just getting older as individuals. But I find myself in a very similar sort of boat to what you described there, as far as what I'm looking for in a game. I don't really, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and even into my early 20s, I was way into 40K back then. I was going to tournaments and I was doing the whole thing, and now I'm just like, man, I'd rather play a campaign game or something like that. But even then, like, I feel like the rules support, while it's there, it's not what the game is quote unquote for in a lot of ways for 40K.
Yeah, completely. And like, I've played 40K as well. I've played a lot of different miniature games at this point, but and for me, 40K, it's meant to be this narrative, this grand narrative of this epic galactic battle of humanity trying to survive and things, and the game on the tabletop doesn't really feel like that ever. It kind of feels very mechanical and very competitively driven. I've recently started playing 30K, which actually feels much more narrative and much more in that space than I found 40K ever did. So, and again, 30K is quite a new addition, and I've only just started playing, so this will probably change over time. But at the moment, it's kind of in that space where there isn't really like, your internet list. There isn't a list that someone can play that's just going to win. It's just people bringing toys, having fun, telling a story, which is just more interesting to me as a gamer than playing games where it's like who can make the best list.
Yeah, the meta hasn't been solved yet, as it were.
Yes, and in the group I play, at least, like, no one is trying to solve it. It's and you even have that thing because the friendship group I'm playing in, where you're playing a game and someone goes, okay, this thing is objectively good, it's broken, it's not fun to play against, and they'll stop bringing it because it's, you want your opponent to have fun. You're there to have fun with your friend. So there is that thing of like not just bringing the best thing you can that's going to guarantee you to the win of the game. It's actually thinking about, okay, well, what do my opponents want to play against? What are they gonna have fun with these things? Which is a slightly different approach to games. And yeah, definitely that has fed into the design of things I make, trying to make them more fun and less competitive. I don't think the games I make could be classed as a competitive game.
You're competing against the bad guys, but
yeah, absolutely,
and they're pretty nasty. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've talked a little bit about 40K and 30K, and I suppose any conversation about miniature gaming has to touch on those at some point. But I guess one of the biggest claims to fame of 40K in the culture at large is the coining of the term grimdark. And I think that brings us neatly into Forbidden Psalm, because I think grimdark is, I think in the intro to solo games video I did, I think I referred it to turning the grimdark up to 11.
Yeah,
but there's just enough of the silliness of sock stealing goblins that it's still it's just fun and funny sometimes too, while your characters are being brutally murdered.
Yeah, it kind of, I think, leans into the origins of like 40K.
Yeah, I was gonna say it reminds me like old school, like back when they were doing 2000 AD and like Judge Dredd stuff.
Yeah, it's very much that in tone, and it's so Forbidden Psalm is based on a role-playing game called Mork Borg, which is a Swedish role-playing game, and I'm butchering how you pronounce that.
I tried looking it up and gave up.
Yeah, I'm a Welsh guy. I don't know how to say Mork Borg. But it's a Swedish game. It has an open license, so people can make content for it. And I approached the makers of Mork Borg and said, hey, I want to make a miniatures game of your game. And they were like, yeah, crack on, just leave us alone. And they weren't that rude at all. They were lovely. In fact, the original artist of the role-playing game, Mork Borg, did the cover art for Forbidden Psalm.
Oh, nice.
All he asked in return was that I painted him some miniatures, which I did, which was super cool of him. So that a big, horrible creature on the front, the Corpse Collector, that's his art. Joanne Noir, he's a fantastic artist. Definitely check him out. And it comes from that setting, which is this grim, dark, medieval fantasy setting. The world is ending. You cannot stop it ending. It's going to end. And you are just trying to eke out your existence at the end. And their role-playing game has a lot of tongue-in-cheek elements. When you cast a spell, it can go wrong, and you roll on this calamity table, and one of the things that can happen is your skeleton inside of you becomes hostile towards you and wants to kill you. So it'll do everything it can to kill you, but it's still inside of you. So it's a very silly game, as well as being quite grim. So Forbidden Psalm definitely pulled from that, and it definitely then being British, having grown up on 2000 AD and Judge Dredd and all these other things that have very much that tongue in cheek. That definitely influenced then the writing of Forbidden Psalm as well, and the setting, and some of the things like the sock stealing goblins, which, by the way, are in the book because at the time of writing I was coming up with creatures and I couldn't find any socks because my wife steals my clothes, and I just created the sock stealing goblin from that.
I love that. So I mean, you mentioned the art too, the cover art, but one of the things, and it's true of Mörk Borg too, is it's got a very distinct visual style, and you very much carried that over into Forbidden Psalm as well. I think I described it as it's almost like a metal zine from the 80s or 90s.
Yeah, absolutely, and the role playing game takes that even further, much further. Like the designers, Joanna is so good in what he does, and in a way, I kind of toned that back a bit for the miniatures game. It's still very chaotic, and definitely that like metal zine feel that you kind of get from it, but more toned back from the role playing. If you go look at the role playing game Mork Borg, the art style and the aesthetic is absolutely fantastic, and it's almost like an art book, not just a role playing
Yeah, for sure. And it's, well, I mean, the Forbidden Psalm has this in common with it too, but like the core book for Mork Borg, like the yellow on it just leaps out and grabs you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just the color use throughout. That's one thing I didn't go as hard on in Forbidden Psalm. Later books I've done definitely have gone heavier. Got more confident, I guess, in my design as I've gone on. But yeah, Forbidden Psalm was the first thing I designed, really. First thing I'd written like this. So yeah, kind of, I guess I was a bit more reserved. Whereas I think my later stuff has kind of gone a lot more into that kind of chaotic aesthetic. Sure.
Right on. Well, one of the things that drew me to Forbidden Psalm, I think it was Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games who eventually sold me on it, watching his review and then one or two of his bat reps of the game. And I'm not a bat rep watching kind of person typically, but I've found that with some of these solo friendly narrative games, I enjoy watching them a little bit more, and then that was definitely true of those videos. But one of the things that stuck out to me, I live in rural Alaska, and finding people to play with is often a bit of a challenge. So I find myself, especially recently, needing to pursue games that are a little more solo friendly. And I guess what I wanted to ask you in that vein is what prompted you to make, I mean, you talked a little bit about co-op. I think I can understand why co-op's in there. But, making the scenarios solo friendly, was that a timing thing with the pandemic?
Yeah. So the book, I started writing the book in February 2021.
Okay.
And it kind of came out then in April. So it was a pretty quick turnaround, and it was in the height of the pandemic. And that definitely influenced having a solo mode. A lot of the playtesting was done solo by myself. Some of it was done, friends. Some of it was done online on, tabletop sim and things. But a lot of it was done solo. And there was nothing inherent in the mechanics that required there to be another person. So that also then fed in. And I literally playtest the game when I'm writing it and when I've written the follow-ons. I have a 1x1 board that I put on the table next to me. I half all the ranges and everything because the game plays on a 2x2 board,
right?
Just so I can playtest it out, and I playtest it solo. So it was hard baked in from day one, really, that there was going to be solo was just a core part of the game, as well as there being a co-op mode and a versus mode. So, if you want to give your friends a kick in, you can. You can have that competitive game.
Meanwhile, the monsters are still trying to eat you.
Absolutely, and it's kind of takes a little bit from Frostgrave on that as well.
Sure.
Where often when you play Frostgrave, you can fight each other, but you actually don't really gain anything from doing so. And it's the same in this. It's actually, if you work together, you'd probably be better off. But you can play against each other if you want. So yeah, and then the co-op mode was built in for that same thing of like, if you want to play with a friend and you each bring your warband and you want to play, and then the solo mode, so if you want to play it on your own. So it was really that option for players then. And also getting value out of the thing you're buying. So if you're buying a rule book, that's $20, $30 or whatever it is, giving people the different options of being able to play it was important to me to give that value to people.
And we'll talk a little bit about the setting and the style too. You mentioned that the world is ending, and I think for people who are unfamiliar with the Mork Borg setting, it's not that the world's ending. A prophecy says the world is ending in 500 years. The world is actively in the process of ending right now.
Yes, yeah, the world is actively ending in the role-playing game as you play. The kind of seas turn to blood and there are plagues of frogs, and it is full biblical ending of the world happening in front of you, and you are just trying to eke out your existence. And it's very similar in Forbidden Psalm. In fact, the core premise is that there is a mad wizard, maybe not a wizard, no one really knows, living in a tower, and
who may or may not be who they say they are.
Yeah, it might not even be really the same guy that he claims to be, but he claims to know how to stop the world from ending in the Forbidden Psalm. So in the role-playing game Mork Borg, there are 7 psalms that are ready to play. And in the miniatures game, he claims that he can find the 8th psalm, which if you read it, it'll stop the world. And that's kind of one of the things that you're doing in the game, is you're trying to find bits of this Forbidden Psalm throughout the game. So to try and prevent the world end. again, this is a world that's going to end, so it might be a bit of a false quest.
Just trying to stop it ending today.
Yeah, very much so. And trying to make some money as you go along and maybe try and survive. And that sounds quite bleak. And to be honest, one of the key principles of the game coming into designing it was I tried to make a game that was fun when your guys die and your guys and gals die. So it's, when you play Necromunda and if you're playing against somebody and one of you guys die and you have a bad game, you don't really want to keep playing the campaign because at that point you're in a losing spiral. The other people get better stuff than you. You're just getting worse and worse. Your crew's getting worse and worse. This game doesn't really have that. You get new people for free. Everyone's gear is kind of not great because it's the end of the world. You've got people running around with femurs as weapons and other things. So you're never that underpowered compared to anybody else.
Yeah, it's almost like Dark Sun in a way, the old D&D setting.
Yeah,
with very low magic and very few metal weapons and.
Yeah, a few people have given that comparison, and it's I think a decent comparison where, things are restrictive in what you've got access to, and you're just trying to do the best you can. And, a warband that's survived 10 sessions isn't going to have much above a new created warband in many ways. So there is some leveling up mechanics and things, but it's to keep that. Even if you lose the game, you're still having some fun, and that was really kind of a core principle of the game in the design of it, so that you can kind of enjoy the bleakness of the world and have fun with it. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Well, and when I was watching Ash's review, one of the things that struck me as well is basically as soon as you open the book, there's a very quick description of who Riprix is, and then a little bit about what you need, which is 2 foot by 2 foot, a tape measure, and some minis. Which, by the way, I do appreciate the 2 foot by 2 foot size because I live in a fairly small house, so it's nice to be able to play. I might even steal that idea of 1 by 1 and just having all the ranges on everything.
Again, that fed into the COVID situation, people being at home. Not having access to their gaming stores or places that can play big games, and it was like, let's make a smaller game. Let's make it 2 by 2, something they can play on a coffee table, something you can bash out with a kid or friend at home. Even those kind of things fed into that decision making. And also, when I've played a lot of miniature games, you have that thing where your first turn is just getting anywhere. Mm-hmm. So because the tables are bigger and your guys don't move that far or something, so it's just like, well, let's cut that first turn out. You're right. Immediately in the action. Let's go.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the random names, and I think there's something to be said. Well, one, I'm terrible at coming up with names for characters on the spot, especially in a scenario like this where I know that they're fairly likely to not survive till the end.
Yeah, the name generators, people seem to really like them. So there's one in the core book. There's an expansion book called In the Footsteps of the Mad Wizard that has another 100 names. The next book I did called Last War, which essentially takes it into a World War I-esque aesthetic, has another 100 names, and then the new book, KillSampleProcess, is another 100. So people really like the name generators, so I just keep doing them.
Why not? Yeah.
It's trying to. I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I use where I'm trying when I come up with new names to make sure I'm not just putting in the same name.
Well, that's a good idea.
So I can Control F and see if I've got the same names or not.
But,
trying to come up with new names. Yeah.
Well, but the other thing I like too about the character creation process is how lightweight it is. I mean, you can, if you've got 5, fantasy-esque minis that you like already, you can be rolling dice in 10 minutes, essentially.
Yeah. Again, feeding into that, having a game that is quick to learn, quick to get to the table. Can play a game, in half an hour at most, and just having it in that sweet spot. Really, if there are games out there that you can spend days and days writing lists for, learning the rules, and really delving into. This is not that game. This is a game that you can pick up and play pretty quickly. And I wanted to keep that rules light. And if anything, the role playing game is incredibly rules light that this is based on. Mm-hmm. A lot of the mechanics and rules are taken from that and actually streamlined even further. So. In that, armor is a dice roll, and you roll a dice to see how much you reduce damage by. In this, you don't. It's a fixed number. So it's removing how many dice you're having to roll, removing extra math. It's really streamlining that process to keep it as minimal rules and when I was playtesting it, it had a lot more rules, and then unless a rule served the fun, it got cut out. So there was a lot of things in it originally that was like, no, that doesn't actually add value. It just adds a rule for the sake of it, so it goes away.
It's like the Marie Kondo method. If it doesn't spark joy, out it goes.
Basically, yeah, in a sense, in the rules. And there's some funny rules in there, which, you know, there were rules in there for throwing your weapon, which is usually a bad decision. And you think in a rules like game, why would that be in there? It's because it's funny. So it's funny that you can just throw your sword at someone across the board if you want.
But then, but now you no longer have a sword.
Yeah, you no longer have a sword, and you probably miss, but you know, it's in there if you want it. So there's a lot of rules like that where it was the rules that stayed are the ones that serve the fun of the game, or making it a playable game, of course. But yeah, so you'll find some rules in there where it's more about having fun again than it is about worrying too much about it being overly complex.
Right on. So you said, you know, that a lot of the mechanics are streamlined versions of what you see in the role-playing game. Is that why the core mechanic for a lot of things is a D20?
That's right, yeah. So the role-playing game uses D20, and it uses in the full suite of like your role-playing dice, so your D4s, D6s, D8s, etc. And I wanted to keep that the same. I know a lot of people don't like D20s for miniature games because they can be quite swingy. In a game where you're almost leaning into that randomness, that's okay, I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and I wanted to keep it compatible. So the Forbidden Psalm book is actually playable as a full campaign for the role-playing game. So for people that don't care about miniatures, they could still buy the book and use it for the original product.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we can talk a little bit about the actual book itself. You know, I think I mentioned, or I don't know if we were even recording yet, but it's, you know, it's a fairly lightweight book. Literally, it's 80-ish pages, and fully half of that is 10 missions that you can play right out of the book. And guidance for kind of, you know, making your own and that sort of thing going forward. So it's a quick read. I haven't read through all the missions because I don't want to spoil myself on what insanity ends up happening later on. But I've read the first couple, and obviously I've watched a battle report of the first couple, and you know already by the second mission, the world could end in the second mission. So
yes. And that has happened to someone. So a player was like, what happens if the world ends? I'm like, well, then the world's ended.
I thought that was self-explanatory, but
yeah, you have to start your campaign again.
You have to burn your book. I'm sorry.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, as you said, half the book is the campaign, which is, you know, narrative, 10 connected scenarios. So really your rules are kind of, I think the rules, if you put them down, are like 10 pages. And then the rest is hostile monsters for you to fight that are kind of AI controlled. It's some very rudimentary AI mechanics. The kind of some equipment pages and things like that. But yeah, the core rules are very streamlined. And the idea being that they are something you can just pick up and read and learn in 23.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the monster AI, like it is simple, but I mean, it just from watching and from proxying around a little bit on my own through the first mission, I found it rather effective. And what's interesting, and what you don't see in a lot of miniature games, I mean, I guess some you do, but I really liked the fact that the monsters can start fighting each other if they're of different types. And for whatever reason, despite the fact that it's making my life presumably a little bit easier, I find it like a little scary.
Yeah, and again, that was a thing of, well, that's funny to me, the idea that monsters
it is.
are not friends, so of course they'd fight. So that's how that ended up in that, and it just makes narrative sense to me that, you know, a goblin and a wendigo, like, they're not going to get on.
Yeah, especially if the goblin takes the wendigo's socks, right?
Exactly. So that was important to me. And with the monsters, what you'll find a lot of the time is there's this kind of core rule set for how they behave, and then each monster has like a special ability. And actually, a lot of the time, the special ability just breaks one of the core rules. And that is very much from there's a game called Cosmic Encounter, a board game, where the core of the game is very simple, but then each alien race in it has a specific rule that breaks one of the other rules. And that kind of fed into the monster design was, you know, every monster behaves the same, except this very specific thing they don't. And they do something a bit different to everybody else. So again, keeping it quite simple in that you can have, you know, 10 monsters in the game. Sounds like a lot, but actually they only do one thing different from anybody else. As long as you like look at what that one thing is, it's actually fairly easy to run them. Yeah, so again, keeping that simplicity while being able to add flavor. So you can have a lot of diversity in the monsters while still keeping the rules relatively light.
Right on. Well, I want to talk a little bit, too, about actually getting on the tabletop and miniatures. And one thing worth noting is that there are little standees that you can print out. I suppose that would be probably easier on the PDF version, but they can be printed out if you don't want to mess with actual miniatures or don't have the budget for actual miniatures. But then you have a little section in here on kitbashing. And when I saw this page, I was like, oh, that's Blanchitsu. That's John Blanche all over it right there.
So that mini is actually the one in the book is what inspired me to write this. So I created that from the role-playing game.
Okay.
As just a thing to do in lockdown because I run out of other things to paint and build. And I just attacked my bits box and built this weird little guy. And it inspired me to then start writing rules for this game. So I was like, he needs to be in the book. And I did want to put in a little bit about kitbashing, and there's a whole list of YouTubers that you can go look at who do kitbashing, painting tutorials and things.
Yeah, some of my favorites are on there actually. Marco Frazzoni is absolutely one of my favorites, as is Pete the Wargamer and Black Magic Craft. I love all those guys.
Marco actually did a video on a warband he did for Forbidden Zone.
Yeah. That's actually where I was first introduced to those Bestiarium Lone Heroes miniatures.
Yeah, and his stuff was great. In the expansion for the core book, In the Footsteps of the Mad Wizard, his warband appear, the ones he painted.
Oh, nice.
Because I reached out to him and we ended up chatting, and he really liked Forbidden Psalm and basically did that video of a painting tutorial for it, which was so nice of him to do. So he was included because I love his stuff, and yeah, it was just good to give a shout out to people that inspired me in kitbashing and building minis, and yeah, definitely very Blanchitsu, and also kind of just make whatever you want to make. It's that kind of game where there isn't a set mini
or roll for it randomly, which is what the last page of the book.
Absolutely, yeah. Or if you haven't got the creative juices flowing, there's tables in the book for rolling to see how your guy looks or what the weapon they have, what they look like. Do they have prosthetics? Do they have a mohawk or that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Again, giving that idea of giving people creative choices, and people have done amazing things in the community of what they've ended up playing this game with. Some people have played it with meeples.
Okay.
From other board games. I've seen people play it with Pokemon toys from like little plastic ones from Amazon that they've then gritted up and made it.
Oh, geez.
So people have been really creative in what they've brought and decided to play with, and other people have used standees and again, it's great because it's getting people into miniatures gaming who haven't previously done it, have had a barriers to entry, and it's been like, hey, there isn't a right way to do this. Do what you want to do, have some fun, and that's been really nice to see people respond to that, and just play with whatever minis they wanted, and it gives that excuse of, is there a cool mini you like? You can use it in this game.
While we're on the subject of minis, and I mentioned Bestiarium, those minis are really a big part of what pushed me over the edge to buy a resin printer. They're fantastic. They're very well suited to the aesthetic of Forbidden Psalm, and I was delighted to find when I subscribed to their, I think I did it through My Mini Factory, not Patreon, but there's a tier that you can get where those minis with a monthly pack or whatever comes with 5th edition D&D adventure and a Forbidden Psalm little mini campaign. And then you told me you're the one who writes those.
Yeah, so they reached out to me and said, basically, I've been bugging them to do stuff for Forbidden Psalm because a lot of people from the community of Forbidden Psalm were using their miniatures in their games. And so they reached out and said, hey, would you be up for writing this? And I was like, yeah, this sounds great. I love your miniatures. This is a really cool partnership. Let's do it. So each month they send me essentially the D&D pack that they've got, and I convert it to Forbidden Psalm. And it means you get every month with their minis, you get a pack that is 3 scenarios, plus all the rules you need then for the monsters and the monster minis. And it's a narrative campaign. So I think we've done like 7 of them at this point.
Okay.
And it takes you through this whole narrative campaign they've been running. in this kind of, again, quite grim setting that they've been using for a lot of the minis. So it fits the Forbidden Psalm theme there. And, you can play, essentially now I think there's probably nearly like 20 scenarios at this point just for the Bestiarium stuff that we've done. And you can play this campaign and take your warband through it as well. So again, solo mode, co-op mode in there. The last couple have been solo and co-op only. They haven't had a versus element.
Okay.
Because the hostiles are so brutal. Strong. Actually, fighting together against it, you're just not going to complete this thing. You're just going to die.
Just don't.
Yeah, and there's no real reward for winning this. It's a survival kind of thing.
I saw that actually. I was looking through the one. I got onto their My Mini Factory tribe just in time to get last month's. I was literally the 30th or 31st, and I read through that, and it was like the rewards is you live. Congratulations.
When they send me the scenarios that they've written for the D&D and I'm reading them like, oh, these are pretty brutal. Yeah, that's converted. And it was like, some of them are, you don't die. That's it. That's what you win. You get to live tomorrow. So they're real fun to work on. It's great to take, their ideas of what they've done and kind of twist them into the Forbidden Psalm a little bit. And same with the monsters that they create. And it's the same thing where, in D&D, a monster will have like 30 different attacks and spells and all these kind of things. And it's like, actually, what is the core thing this monster does? And then drilling that down, putting that into that Forbidden Psalm format of, here is a monster, it follows the monster's rules, here is the one thing it does different. So yeah, doing that for people as well. And it just gives people an option for, when they're 3D printing their minis from Bestiarium, that they've got something to use them with.
Yeah, I love that idea. That really appealed to me. And it's only a couple bucks extra beyond the cost of the STLs for the minis themselves. And you can I think on My Mini Factory and Patreon, there's a tier where if you don't have a 3D printer or don't have a buddy with a 3D printer, you can just get the scenarios and the 5e module as well for that. So
yeah, and honestly, not just saying it because I write the Forbidden Psalm one, but the 5e module, if you're a D&D player, they're really great.
I was reading through them.
Yeah, they really put effort in. The art they put in is fantastic. And, as a creator, it's a really simple thing for me because I take this already fantastic thing, just tweak it a bit for my game and the setting of Forbidden Psalm, and give it back to them. And then they do all the art and all the layout. So it's, one of the easiest things I do each month. And they're just great to work with. So, yeah, loving the partnership. And we're going to carry on doing it for as long as they put up with me.
Well, so we've talked a little bit about, expansion of content through these Bestiarium scenarios. You've mentioned the expansions. Are there 4?
So there are, where are we at now? There are 4 mini expansions, which are kind of little, almost like zine type levels. So they're between 10 and 15 pages, mini ones. So they have between like 3 and 4 scenarios in, some extra rules. So there are, let me grab them from behind myself so I can actually remember which ones there are. So we did one called A Dead Festival, which was like a Halloween special.
Okay.
Which has very Halloween-themed scenarios in it. It's got 3 scenarios, some of the hardest, most brutal scenarios we've done. There is Dungeons and Death, which was kind of a community-created project where we had a lot of pieces of terrain submitted by the community that they'd made, and then I wrote some rules for their pieces of terrain.
Oh, cool.
Put them in as scenarios. So that's pretty cool. And then in the back of that one, there's also rules for running it as an endless dungeon mode. So if you want to just think of it as like a dungeon delving, you're going in with your crew, trying to survive as far as you can into a dungeon. Then the next 2 were actually, again, collaborations with other mini makers. So there is the Rotten Bits mini expansion, which was with a company called Westphalia, who are doing the official Mork Borg minis.
Okay.
So they reached out. We had a conversation. So we've done some rules for the official Mork Borg minis, but for the Forbidden Psalm. So it's a bunch of rules for monsters and things and some scenarios. And then same thing with, there is a game called Fearsome Wilderness, which is a board game / miniatures line. They also do the STLs that you can get. So if you want to 3D print them, but they also sell the actual minis. And it's all based on kind of American folklore creatures.
Okay.
So they asked, would I be up for doing rules for those creatures for Forbidden Psalm? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So there's also that one. That one came out, I think, like 2 weeks ago. So those are the like mini ones. And then we've also got the In the Footsteps of the Mad Wizard, which is a big expansion. So it's a book that's bigger than the original. The original is 80 pages. That's over 100. It's got 17 scenarios, rules for hiring mercenaries, for having pets that you can add to your warband, a lot more floors and feats and weapons and things. So it's kind of a full package expansion. It's, you know, if you like Forbidden Psalm and you want lots of content, that's the one to get.
Great.
Because it's a huge amount. It's also got rules in it for playing up to 3 and 4 player games.
Oh, fun.
Expand the madness.
You might need that many warbands, right? As hard as some of those missions sound.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's got nearly 20 more monsters in it. It's a big book expansion basically. So that's the one where you play through the first book and you really like the game and you just want more. That's the thing to buy. Forbidden Psalm, In the Footsteps of the Mad Wizard, and it carries on the narrative from the end of the core book. So no spoilers, but yeah. So once you play to the end of the core book, if you want to know what happens next in the story, that book takes you through that. We then did Last War, which is the same rule set as Forbidden Psalm, but it takes it into a different setting. So it's the same kind of idea, is that the world is ending or has ended. So the idea is that it's a very World War I aesthetic, and those remaining are just now searching the trenches for whatever they can find. So it's food, supplies, and you're one of the warbands doing it. So
it's almost like a roadside picnic vibe, or
yes,
Zona Alpha kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like that, but again, more World War I/II.
Right, as a period piece, yeah.
Yeah, and that was from talking to the community about what they wanted, and they were like, well, we really like the rule set. We just want to see it in other settings.
We want gas masks.
Yeah, basically. It was like, so you've got that.
You just got all these new Deathcore Krieg models, and
that was kind of what I think a lot of people wanted it for. But there was also a thing where people, before the game came out, because Last War is out in PDF, physical comes out in September, they were building models, and then they went and read the rules after, and they realized, like, oh, I built everyone with guns. We'd all get guns, and it's like at the start of the campaign, like, you can afford like a gun, and maybe some bullets, and everyone else has got like a spade and like
again, perfect for Deathcore Krieg. You got a trench shovel. Yeah. You're good to go.
So that was the kind of reimagining. So that's a standalone expansion. You don't need the core book to buy that one. That one has the rules for everything. Again, it's over 100 something pages because it's about that value again. You know, if you're rebuying the same rules, I wanted to make sure there was enough value there to justify the new book. And then the next one that's on Kickstarter at the moment is KillSampleProcess, which
I wanted to make sure we got to that. So yeah, and just looking through the art, I was kind of immediately sold. Not only was I already enjoying, you know, at that point, I think I had the PDF. I got in the PDF for Forbidden Psalm through Wargame Vault by then, and then I happened upon the Kickstarter. I think I saw you post something about it on Facebook and went and looked at the art, and I was like, oh, this is what Necromunda should look like, kind of thing. Is kind of where my brain went.
Yeah, it's again, it's that kind of grimdark cyberpunk artwork. I'm working with some fantastic artists. Some of it's my art, some of it is other people's that I've working with on it. And it is very much, a kind of very grimy, grim cyberpunk world that you're going to be playing in. You will work for a variety of different people at this point. Doc is one of them. You've got Fence. You've got the mysterious V. So different people giving you missions to go on as your crew. It's kind of, it's a grim cyberpunk city that you're kind of playing in. A lot around, the police and enforcer bots. There is people that have maybe gone too far with their cyber mods and have kind of been lost to it a little bit. And a core mechanic is that everything is hackable. You can unload people's guns from across the table.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, so it's just taking the idea of Forbidden Psalm and adding some tech to it.
Yeah, awesome. And that's so as we're talking here in the first week of August, there's about 10 days left on that Kickstarter that ends on the 17th in the evening UK time.
That's right. Yeah, I try to launch them at like 5 p.m. my time because it tends to be most of the world is awake. And most of the Americans.
Right. So yeah, and it's very reasonable pricing to get the PDF, softcover, or a hardcover version. And it looks like the plan for the PDF is that it'll be done pretty soon.
Yeah. So the book is 99% written. The only bits that aren't are the stretch goals on the Kickstarter. I don't like putting things up on Kickstarter if it's not finished. Because I want to know I can deliver it to people. So it's important to me that it's been play tested, that I've written it, that it's the design's there. So the only bits left in the core book, I've got the design doc open now. So I'm waiting on 3 pieces of art from some designers that I've some community artists that I've worked with who have made some absolutely amazing art before. I'm really looking forward to see what they're doing. I've seen some of the concept stuff they've done, really cool. Yeah. So that needs to be added, and then the stretch goals. So 2 guest scenarios being written at the moment as well. So that's literally the only things left to go in the book, and then it'll go to my editor. They'll edit it and correct all my spelling mistakes, and point out where like something doesn't necessarily make sense, because when you write rules, you're playing it, it makes sense to you, but then someone else can read it and be like, what the hell are you on about here?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to get the PDF copies out to people in September. And then the physical books will be February next year. And that's mostly because international shipping and printing is a nightmare at the moment.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask about that. And that's why I think it's great that all of the physical pledge levels include the PDF. I found that is not always the case with some RPG and wargaming rule sets that I see on Kickstarter. So
100%. Like it's one of my biggest, bugbears when I buy a physical copy of a book, like a D&D book, for example, and then they want another, 30, 40 pounds to buy the
and it's going to be 9 months until you get the book in your hands. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's always going to be a thing I'm going to offer is, hey, if you just want the PDF, you can just get the PDF. But if you're going to buy the physical, you're going to get that PDF as well. Get you playing before you have to wait for the physical.
Yeah.
As well. So yeah, it's important to me that people have that. One of the things I've been doing recently as well is going back to the original. So this will be coming out soon, and doing an easy read version. So removing all the art, because they are very chaotic in their art.
It's very, yeah.
Yeah, and for some people with, different disabilities, visual impairment, screen readers can struggle to interact with it. So that is, that's coming out as well. There'll be easy read versions that will go out to anyone that's bought the book. They'll be free. They'll just come out and be added to your, purchase on wherever you've bought it.
Yeah, it might be easier even for everybody if they needed to reference something quickly. Not that there are a lot of rules to keep track of, but
yeah, absolutely. And just easy for people if they want to print bits. You're not printing it with a bunch of ink.
Yeah, printing the PDF for Forbidden Psalm would be a bit of a bear.
Oh yeah, it really would. And the later books are worse because they've got more design.
That's what you said. You got more confident in introducing some of the chaotic elements. So
yeah, I can't recommend printing, particularly KillSampleProcess. Unless you really want to go through a lot of ping, you're going to go through a lot of ping in KillSampleProcess. It's the cyberpunk pink and blues.
Yep. Yeah, that vaporwave kind of.
Yeah.
Color palette.
Not printer friendly at all. So yeah, doing a version that is important. So that'll be coming later then.
Looks great on a tablet though.
I hope so.
I mean, Forbidden Psalm certainly does.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, like I said, Forbidden Psalm was the first. I've done design work before, but not like this. I've done stuff for my actual day job, which is very different to this. So yeah, this was my first kind of foray into this world, and it's had really good reception from people, so I'm kind of blown away nice people have been about it.
Now, you said, in last war, you had people making guns on all their models only to discover to their chagrin that they had maybe one gun. For KillSampleProcess, I'm seeing a list of weapons available here, and there are a number of guns listed there. If I make up a bunch of crazy cyborg models with guns, am I going to find that I've done myself a disservice?
Not as badly in
Okay.
Kill Samples. But yeah, Kill Sample, you definitely are going to start with more ranged options. It's definitely a much more ranged heavy game, much more gun heavy than the previous ones. There's a lot of counters to that then, so armor and different things you could do. And again,
And hacking their guns from across the board.
exactly. So some of the guns will have the cyber keyword, so the cyber keyword is important. Some of the melee weapons also have the cyber word, because why not? So there is a cyber sword that you can hack from across the table. 'Cause why wouldn't you? If something has the cyber keyword, it means it's now susceptible to being hacked. There are ancient rifles, which is basically like an AK-47 that someone's found. So you can have guns that aren't hackable if you want to go that way. But then they are maybe a little bit harder to come across because they are like antiques. And then you've got your other guns then that are like cyber guns. So you've got a little bit more money to spend at the beginning of KillSampleProcess than in previous Forbidden Psalm games. The guns are a little bit more freely available. But then some of the more high-tech stuff, so cyber mods that you can get installed. So there's a bunch of different things you can actually get, modded into your body, into your crew's bodies. Of course, there's a whole table of malfunctions that can happen with them.
Of course. It wouldn't be a Forbidden Psalm game without that.
Yep, absolutely. Including things like the mod can explode, giving you a random injury. It can just break so that you just can't use it. It can daze you. You get an electric shock from it type thing.
Now, can I make someone's mechanical skeleton become hostile to them while it's still inside them?
Not quite, but you can take over people's cyber mods. So that's the other thing that's hackable, is people with cyber mods, they're hackable. And there's a bunch of different things you can do with those, including, taking over them and actually making them act a single action, which could include like attacking one of their own guys, attacking themselves. There's a bunch of different things you can do on that with the cyber mods. So yeah, cyber mods are now a thing for your guys and gals. You've also got drones that you can bring along. So they're a bit more expensive. So there's stuff that you can like definitely buy at the start. But if you want some of the more high-tech stuff, if you want to bring a drone, then you're probably not going to get everyone to have a rifle. So you're then looking at, okay, do I equip everyone with like literally one of the weapons is a broken bottle, which is free. So do I bring people that have just got, a broken bottle and a drone? Or do I bring guys with like pistols, rifles, and good armor and save up for the drone later? So you've got those options then.
It's a meaningful decision making there.
Yeah, and with Last War, I introduced this mechanic, which is every crew can pick one specialist. And you've always got a specialist. So if your specialist dies, you pick a new specialist for free. And the specialists then usually come with slightly better equipment, or they come with a specific set of skills, which normally your normal guys, your standard kind of troops, you roll for their feet, you roll for their floor, so you might end up with really random stuff. With this, they tend to have like predetermined ones. So you've got like a hacker who gains 2 of the hacking programs straight out the bat. Or you can have a disconnected. So the disconnected, they are immune to being hacked. They can never be hacked, but they also can't use anything with the cyber keyword. But they come with a free ancient rifle with 1 magazine. So, you've got someone that basically is like, I'm technophobic, I'm staying away from the tech, but I get, a decent rifle at the start of the game for free. So you can pick one of these type, and there's, I think there's 12 different specialists. So you can just pick one. My favorite is Phoenix. They just start with C5 explosive. That's it. They just have this explosive that you can put on scenery and blow it up.
Nice.
That's all they get. But they start every scenario with a free one.
I love destructible terrain. It's one of my favorite things about Marvel Crisis Protocol is destructible terrain. So
yeah, I definitely wanted that in. So in this, the C5, which is obviously just rip on C4.
Sure.
That explosive can blow up scenery, because again, I kind of agree. I like being able to interact with scenery in games, and then you just remove that piece of scenery.
All right.
So yeah, that's one of the specialists. I think it's one of the least useful in the sense of like what it gets equipment-wise.
But it's hilarious.
For me, it's the most fun.
Fair enough. So yeah, there's still some time. Once this video goes up, there will still probably be, I'm guessing, probably a week left on the Kickstarter by then. So any of my viewers can go take a look at that. And as we're filming or recording this on Saturday, we're just shy of the 20,000 pound stretch goal, which is the machine gun. Is that a Bestiarium STL?
So no, that is working with it's a one-man band, but they're called Knucklebones Miniatures.
Okay.
The STL of the Angel of Morte miniature for Last Wars. We did the same thing where we released a miniature for one of the monsters as an STL for free. Basically, we picked the monster that's going to be the hardest thing to like find a miniature for. So a lot of the things in the game are various type of ghouls or zombies or robots, things that you'll find minis for pretty forwardly. But the Machine God is this kind of amalgamation of body parts and cables and tech into this huge monstrosity. That's going to be relatively difficult to find a specific model for. So getting that designed as an STL to put out there for people.
Okay. Well. Yeah, I'm looking at their My Mini Factory. And there's some really good looking stuff. Definitely fits the theme. There's a lot of it's very Turnip 28, a lot of it.
Yes. I think he started doing stuff at Turnip 28 and then obviously came across to Forbidden Psalm, saw what we were doing for Forbidden Psalm, got chatting with him and decided to get him to design some stuff for us as well. What's been nice about Forbidden Psalm is there's so much stuff being created by the community to bring into it. So like I said, there's a whole expansion that's just based on the content the community create. And then spoke to the community and said, hey, are you happy for me to put this in?
Yeah, that's great.
KillSampleProcess we ran a competition with 28 mag. And that was for people to submit scenario ideas. The scenario is a AI billboard that if you get too close, it just spams pop-up ads. And you've got to try and take it out. And then the hostile is a window washer bot, because Cyberpunk has lots of windows, was the pitch, that is aggressively trying to clean you. Which I just love. So those are going to be in the book.
Oh, that's great.
Window washer bot and an AI billboard, which kind of shows you where the game is going.
Yeah, and if this really takes off and you get to £1 million, you're buying a sea fort.
Yes, I always put I say joke stretch goal, but I obviously really want a sea fort.
Well, who wouldn't?
Right. The last one in the last war was I would dig an actual trench in my garden for £1 million. I think the previous one to that was I would do a Jeff Bezos and go to space. So we've yet to reach the million. I'm hoping this time.
Yeah, right. There's still 10 days left.
Yeah. The sea fort is only £50,000, as I've pointed out to my wife multiple times.
Oh, so you have money to renovate it then?
Exactly, because it is in a bit of disrepair and the technical shots aren't fully up to date. So would need some cleaning out and sorting.
Well, best of luck to you on that. Where can people find you and find your games?
Yeah, so forbiddensarm.com is the website, which has updates on all the games. I'm on various platforms, so find me on Twitter at optimisticnil, N-I-L. I'm on Instagram as I don't even know my handles. How bad is that?
I'm bad about that too, because manning the fort's taken on a couple of them, and so I had to, like, oh, did I do MTF minis or did I do manning the fort minis or
yeah, I do different ones as well because these were all set up before I published anything. So
yeah, of course, yeah, no, same, yeah,
yeah. So that's Saint Imp, so the word Saint and then followed by the word Imp on Instagram. We also have a Discord. So that can be found on the website, forbiddensarm.com. So if anybody will join us there, we've also got a Facebook page and all the various social media. So if you just put in Forbidden Psalm, you'll either get the game or you'll get really, really weird Christian stuff.
I did find that when I was.
I get a lot of people joining the Facebook and get real confused. Like, oh no, you wanted the different Forbidden Psalm. I'm sorry.
Is it like an apocryphal book of the Bible, or is it?
Yeah.
But feel free to stick around.
Yeah, I get a lot of people from Asia joining, thinking it's some sort of Christian thing, and then I have to point out, I'm like, it's quite the opposite. I'm really sorry.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But yeah, so you can find us there. But if you just Google Forbidden Psalm, the website should come up.
All right, and the Kickstarter is KillSampleProcess, and
yes.
Definitely folks should check that out. I've already backed it. I'm going to be getting a physical copy of the book. I'm excited about that. Whenever that happens, once shipping becomes less of a nightmare. But hey, I'll have the STL here in the not too distant future, and definitely plan on giving that a look in a proper review when that comes out. So.
That's brilliant. Oh, I really appreciate it. Again, being a small creator that started doing this just over a year ago, having people play or interested in my game kind of still blows me away. Yeah, it's kind of just feels amazing to have people even interested in what I'm making.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Well, it's quality. I like I said, there's so many things that just appeal to kind of the old school gamer in me. So I was very pleased with the core book, and yeah, I guess I'll have to. Well, I'll play through this first, and then by then I'll probably have KillSampleProcess, and then we'll go. Maybe I'll do that. Last War sounds interesting, so maybe I'll give that a try as well down the road. So, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, just thanks for having me, and yeah,
my pleasure.
If anyone wants to reach out, please do. I'm pretty approachable and always happy to chat. So
yeah,
I just
slid right into those DMs, and here we are talking a week later. So.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, and I'll be hanging around in the Discord, so we'll chat again soon.
Take care, man.
That was my interview with Kevin Rahman, creator of Forbidden Psalm. Again, he has a Kickstarter up right now for KillSampleProcess, a cyberpunk version of Forbidden Psalm, which is a standalone game. You don't need the original in order to play, but I do recommend picking up the original. You can find links to the Kickstarter and other Forbidden Psalm products down in the description below. And if you stuck around till the end of the video, I really appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you gave this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I am working on getting interviews with some other indie game designers in the near future, and we'll be covering some of those games on the channel going forward. Until next time, avoid the sock-stealing goblins, and thanks for watching.